Welcome to the November 2019 edition of This Month in Payroll. I'm Rohan Geddes, the National Leader of PwC's Payroll Consulting Practice, providing the latest news and updates affecting the payroll sector in Australia. This month, we have a lot of topics to cover. We'll look at wage underpayments, remedial superannuation guarantee contributions, annual reports from the Fair Work Ombudsman and the Fair Work Commission, and changes to AUSkey that affect payroll. But first, to underpayments. We have long spoken of the coming opportunity for payroll to raise its profile at a board and management level, given improvements in technology and the increased focus of the regulators on using payroll as a source of truth. The challenge of this is that payroll has been an area that has been required to cope with a lack of investment in resources, training and technology. However, as has become evident, small configuration issues in payroll or in time and attendance, when extrapolated over an entire workforce over many years, can add up to large numbers. Well, with so many high-profile employers making headline news for wage underpayment, we are now seeing a change in focus from boards wanting to understand whether they are carrying risk in their own payroll function and starting to invest in controls to support payroll. So when we are talking to boards, what are some of the issues that we are highlighting that may result in underpayments? Incorrect application of rules regarding rostering, leading to unanticipated overtime and penalty rate liabilities. Incorrect classification of instrument-covered employees. A failure to accurately record hours of work, including breaks. An incorrect reliance on annualised salaries. Most industrial instruments do not expressly permit payment of an annualised salary. In this case, providing an employee with an annualised salary is a breach. Further, the annualised salary, if allowed, must be sufficient to offset what an employee would have been entitled to under their award once overtime, shift penalties and allowances are considered. Incorrect payroll configuration as it relates to overtime, penalties, loading allowances and superannuation guarantee. And personal or carers leave accruing incorrectly, particularly for shift workers or part-time workers. And then what proactive steps are we encouraging employers to take to review their payroll? First, seek legal advice to confirm that the application of industrial instruments and permissible payment and engagement methods is accurate. Secondly, run a hire-to-retire process walkthrough, assessing payroll processes, documentation, performing stakeholder interviews, identifying areas that require manual intervention and any gaps in the time and attendance data capture process. Thirdly, review payroll code configuration to ensure the award or EA interpretation has been coded correctly into the payroll system and to ensure that SG coding is correct. This is particularly relevant at the moment given the proposed SG amnesty. Fourth, review governance controls to assess whether they are adequate, that risk frameworks are in place, and to ensure that sufficient support is provided to payroll functions. And finally, review annualised salary practices to ensure that annualised salaries are an appropriate payment mechanism and, if so, are sufficient to cover the minimum wage to which each employee is entitled to under the relevant award. How are other stakeholders responding to wage underpayments? Well, last month we spoke about the proposed SG amnesty and also the proposed removal of discretion to waive penalties, even for late lodgement. These changes reflect the Tax Office's strengthening of its stance around employment obligations, such as superannuation guarantee. From a payroll tax perspective, the Queensland State Revenue Office has formed a view that when an employee remediates a wage underpayment, the employer is required to go back and amend prior year tax returns for that state. This differs to most other states who, like the Tax Office, recognise the wage underpayment only in the year that it is paid. Then, at a government level, the Attorney-General and Industrial Relations Minister Christian Porter last month proposed that directors of companies that fail to pay workers properly could be banned from sitting on boards. Comments such as this are very likely to attract the attention of your boards. With it brings both increased scrutiny and also increased opportunity for payroll to demonstrate their value. Remedial superannuation guarantee contributions. With a number of superannuation guarantee remediation jobs underway nationally, the Tax Office has released a timely fact sheet on the Commissioner's discretion to disregard or reallocate remedial superannuation guarantee contributions. Even though remedial SG contributions may relate to an earlier period of time, they are treated as a concessional contribution in the year that they are made to the employee's chosen super fund. As a result, these remedial contributions may cause your employees to exceed their concessional contributions cap, resulting in them having to pay additional tax and an excess concessional contributions charge. The ATO's fact sheet reminds employees that they are able to apply for these remedial SG contributions to be disregarded or to be allocated to another year and not count towards their concessional contributions cap. The ATO has the discretion to do this for contributions cap purposes only, but not for other purposes. The circumstances which give rise to remedial SG contributions being made are generally those circumstances considered to be unforeseeable and outside of the control of the employee. Note that if the employee was a director of the employing entity, the circumstances of underpayment may not be considered outside their control. If the employee believes they will exceed their cap, they can apply for a determination to disregard or reallocate contributions to another year. The employer cannot make the application on behalf of the impacted employee. They can, however, help their employees with the application. For example, if an underpayment is discovered, then, at the time of remediation, employers should provide their employees with a letter outlining the amounts of the Remedial SG contributions and the quarters of the relevant income year to which those contributions relate. To apply to have contributions disregarded or allocated to another income year, the employee will need to complete an application excess contributions determination form. It's reporting time for Fair Work, and the Fair Work Ombudsman and the Fair Work Commission have both released their annual report. The Fair Work Ombudsman's annual report revealed a significant increase in recovered wages, record visits to their resources and firm enforcement of workplace laws. Highlights of the report include more than $40 million recovered for 18,000 underpaid employees during the year. This is the highest total recoveries figure in the regulator's history. That said, we would expect that next year the number will increase further. There were more than 29,000 workplace disputes between workers and businesses that were resolved by the Fair Work Ombudsman. There was a record 17.8 million visits to fairwork.gov.au to access information and 380,000 calls from workers and employers. The annual report also showed the areas of focus for the Fair Work Ombudsman. As at 30 June 2019, the Ombudsman had 67 matters before the courts. Many of these alleged exploitation of vulnerable workers. Over 50% of litigations filed involved businesses in the fast food, restaurants and cafe sector. The Fair Work Ombudsman secured more than $4.4 million in court order penalties, and inspectors issued almost $500,000 in on-the-spot fines for payslip and for record-keeping breaches. And anonymous reports to the Fair Work Ombudsman increased, with over 16,000 reports being received, resulting in 2,800 workplace audits. The Fair Work Commission also released its annual report. Reflecting on the year with regard to approving enterprise agreements, the Fair Work Commission noted that timeliness of approving agreements had been one of its focuses in 2018-19. The median time for approving agreements at the start of the year was 76 days from lodgement, with 2,063 applications on hand in January 2019. By making changes in operational practices, including streamlining communication with parties and by increasing resources and additional information materials, the Fair Work Commission has reduced the median time down to 34 days, dropping the number of open applications from 2,000 down to about 550. Of note was the fact that the volume of agreement applications which have been assessed as non-compliant has more than doubled since 2016. During 2018-19, 66% of agreements approved required undertakings to resolve deficiencies, up from 35% 3 years earlier. It was somewhat amusing to note, though, the solution provided to what had turned out to be an enormous undertaking to complete a 4-yearly review of modern awards, which still has not been finalised some 5 years later. Over that time, there have been more than 1,000 hearings and hundreds of decisions and statements. The solution? On 12th of December 2018, the section of the Fair Work Act covering the 4-yearly review was repealed with effect from 1 January 2018. So, this means that the solution to the enormous undertaking of reviewing awards every 4 years is simply to not complete any more 4-yearly reviews. The Commission will, however, complete the current review. Finally, just a reminder that from 1 April 2020, AUSkey and Manage ABN Connections will be replaced by MyGovID and Relationship Authorization Manager, known as RAM. This improvement will provide more secure and flexible access to government online services. But it does mean that businesses will need to change their AUSkey over. This will require businesses to set up a MyGovID and to link it to Relationship Authorization Manager. More information about this necessary change can be found on the ATO website. This is our last edition of This Month in Payroll for 2019. I would like to sincerely thank all of you for joining us and investing this time in continuous learning, discussion, and connecting with your payroll peers. For several years, we've been working to raise the profile and potential of payroll in Australia, and it feels as though the spotlight is finally being shone on the importance and the complexities of the payroll function. We look forward to this growing focus on payroll in 2020 and hope to see much more investment in technological advancements, support and training, as well as greater attention from senior management and boards. I'd like to take this opportunity to wish you all a safe and relaxing break over Christmas and the New Year. This Month in Payroll will be back in January 2020. In the meantime, if you have any payroll questions, you can find information on our website, pwc.com.au/payroll, or email me at rohan.geddes@pwc.com, or message me via LinkedIn. Thanks, have a great Christmas and great end of the year.